Well, I know that for some of you, you'll be happy to know that today is the last monster we're going to talk about. The series is going to continue because as we talk about these monsters and images that give expression to the inner turmoil or conflict that we experience and some of the outer chaos that we experience as human beings, so that we can begin to cope and understand them and deal with them. So we're given a reaction. So over the next 3 Sundays, we're going to be looking at how we respond in ways that bring God's light, life, love, and hope into our world. That there's actually positive things that we can do to share that. But today, we're going to be talking about the image of the mummy. And I have it up here and he's a frightful looking guy. And it always amazed me that the mummy could actually ever terminate anybody's life. I mean, actually, he couldn't ever sneak up on you, even though they've kind of upgraded him in today's some of today's movies. But the original one had an arm strapped to him, and he always drug his foot. I'm thinking to myself, now wouldn't you hear that if you were there? But apparently nobody did, and he's not catching up or winning any races, right? So how is it that he could ever terminate someone's life? But he's a scary creature for sure, that lifts up for us what happens to us when we're too wrapped up in ourselves. We're too wrapped up in who we are and what's going on with our life. It's a perfect image and commentary on our life today, isn't it? Because it's amazing how we get so wrapped up in ourselves. And how do we do that nowadays? We have those cell phones. And we can be sitting in the midst of a family event or a dinner with friends, and even on the elevator, and people don't ever even notice who's around them. What they do is they pull out their cell phone, they got to check their all-important emails or what somebody just posted on Facebook, and so we are totally oblivious to anything around us. We are so wrapped up in ourselves that, like that mummy, we are barely moving and responding and engaging in the life around us. And some people try to do that while they're driving, because whatever is going on is so important that they can't miss it. That's that FOMO that they talk about, F-O-M-O, fear of missing out. I'll do a message on that sometime. That we get so focused and that we become oblivious to the stuff that's around us and what happens. And we are truly in a way killing our community because of this. And we're missing the opportunity to make connection with people around us. Just like that image of the mummy. And it's amazing to me, you know, and that it spans into our political, and won't we all be glad when this election is finally over? Goodness gracious. But the reality is that it's not going to stop, because just as soon as this election is settled, they'll start running for 2018 and 2020 right away. And it's like, when can we ever get together? When can we move beyond what my view is and what I think is right? And when do we ever begin to work on what is our view? What's going to work for the most people, if not all people? And it's going to require us to compromise, to get out of ourselves enough to know that other people have perspectives and views that we need to listen to. We can't be wrapped up in ourselves. Jesus had some very definite things that bring us good news, that pull us out of ourselves. He had the solution to what our problem is presently in our society and as human beings. And so he had some things to say in Luke 4, if we could put that up. At his very beginning of Jesus' ministry, he's tempted by the devil. We have this story. And so the devil led him, Jesus, to a high place and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And he said to him, I will give you all authority and splendor, for it has been given to me, which is a lie, because that's what the devil does. The devil is a deceiver, a liar, a trickster. It has been given to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to. Another lie. And so if you worship me, it will all be yours. Now, isn't that, if Jesus were truly wrapped up in himself, that's what his goal would be, and he would justify it by saying, you know what? If I do that, then I will have the power to really help people. If I have that kind of authority, I really will justify that kind of power because I'll be able to help so many more people out there. But he says, no, it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Not serve me, not serve mine, but to serve God. Get out of yourself, in other words. Another wonderful, besides the mummy, a more recent image is, how many of you saw the movie WALL-E? It's about a little robot that's left on earth to find some life, or actually Eve comes down to find some evidence of life, and WALL-E falls in love with Eve. Eve has to go back to the mothership and let people know whether there's life on earth or not, because everybody's living on this ship. But all the people that are on that ship ride around in these hover chairs. But they don't even notice anything or anyone around them, because on their hover chair has everything that they possibly need, and all of their information comes from a screen, just like our cell phones. And they don't move anymore. They don't walk. They don't even engage with each other because they are so overwhelmed. Jesus says to us, you know, when he went by the Sea of Galilee, our next scripture, he saw a man named Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net in the lake, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, come, follow me, and I will make you fish for people. In other words, get up and follow me. And that invitation is to each one of us. Put your cell phone down, put your iPad down, get away from the screens. Get up and follow him, and he will make you more than who you are or what you are. And he'll connect you, because what you're going to do is fish for people. You're going to be engaged with people in sharing with them my life and love, in my mission. So you got to get up and you got to get engaged. Later, he says in Mark, when two of his disciples, two brothers, James and John, at the behest of their mother, says, go to Jesus. And when he comes into his glory, again, it's all about me, put yourselves first and ask Jesus if you can sit at his right hand and his left hand, places of honor. Lord, remember us. And so they ask Jesus, and he has this guidance for them. He says, you know, those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. But not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to become great among you, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. It's amazing how people in the secular world can discover these same ancient truths just by living life and experiencing the successes and the failures of it. Recently, a young man who was rather successful and gained great acclaim as a young person, Ryan Hamilton, had gone through in his young life the ups and downs, and recently he wrote a book called Ego is the Enemy. And in a very haunting way says exactly these words. He says, fight the impulse to hate subservience and think that it's a waste of time because that's your ego. Realize that greatness comes from being the least important person in the room. Amazing. He could have been quoting Jesus at that very instant. But he came to this realization through just experiencing life and knowing that fame and success was fleeting. And that he too was so brought down by his failures. But he was open to the lessons that they taught him, which was the ego needs to recede. We need to be more outward focused. And so Jesus, the very last night that he's with his disciples, wants to impress upon them what life is going to be like without his physical presence. And what all of his ministry has been leading up to is summed up in this one action. When, right before they have dinner together, he gets up from the table and he goes and he gets a bowl of water and a towel. And he begins to go one by one, washing the feet of his disciples. And they're horrified because their master and teacher is doing this for them. He's putting into action what he has said. No, if you want to be great, you must become a servant. And so he says this to them. Do you understand what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. For I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done for you. And the incredible thing about that is that image makes us and calls us to be caretakers of each other. And to put aside the things, our wants and our desires for ourselves, and to get into the lives of those around us. I've told you this before, but one Christmas, I was serving this large church, 1,500-member church in Quincy, Illinois. And at Christmas time, we had our Christmas Eve worship services, and then we came home, and our tradition is that we open those gifts after the service on Christmas Eve night. And this one particular Christmas, and I had been so busy with the meetings at the church and planning this worship service and doing and making these calls and communions and all of that we do before, that Judy bought all the gifts for the kids, and basically she wrapped them. And so on Christmas Eve, we all settled in after a Christmas Eve services and a long day, and we started opening our gifts, and the kids would open up their gifts one by one, and they would say, "Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom. This is really what I wanted." And I'm sitting there taking this in as one gift after another is being opened, and the kids are thanking their mother for each gift that they have. And finally, I had my own ego had to be roused a little bit, and I said, "Hey, wait a minute. What do you think I am, a potted plant? I was part of this." And they said, "Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jim." But the truth was, she had bought those gifts. She had taken the time, and they knew that. And she had made that connection with them, which me being such an important senior pastor of a 1,500-member church, all in my head, had failed to know the importance that it's all about relationships and the things we do together. The day, as I said, after Halloween is called All Saints' Day. And we remember the people who, in the faith, rose to high stature. And they didn't set out to do that. None of them did. They simply found the way to make connection with other people and to serve them. And that's why we remember them as being saints, because they were able to do that. They were able to get out of themselves and touch other people's lives. Did I just hear Wally? Some character I just heard. That's okay. Recently, and this points to it for me, some of you saw that in the news, in the Melbourne, Palm Bay area, a man had driven off the road, went down into a ravine, his car turned over and caught fire. The passersby, unlike this man who just walked by poor Lazarus at his gate every day, they stopped, like that Good Samaritan, stopped. And they got out of their cars. And they formed a human chain to get all the way down to where this guy was, get him out of his car, and pull him all together. There must have been 30 people pulling him up this hill or out of the ravine. Saved his life. And you know, the amazing thing for me is I really doubt that when they got out of the car, they started to ask each other, who are you going to vote for in the election? I'm not sure I want to hang on to your hand if you're going to vote for that other person. And I bet they never asked each other, well, are you a Lutheran, or are you a Baptist, are you a Catholic? Because, you know, and God forbid if you're a Mormon, and if you're an unbeliever totally, we can't make that. You know, their concern wasn't about the things, the categories that separate and divide us so much. It simply was, there's a human being down there, a brother or sister. I don't care if he votes for whomever, we need to pull him out of that fiery car and save him. And they did it. And you wonder, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Put our phones down, get out of our lives, and get out of our little categories and our little petty beliefs that we think are so important, but that divide us, and start joining hands. That's our salvation. Let us pray.